thank you so much for joining us as we continue our build-up coverage to the delivery of the 26th national budget by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. And as always, we really like to make things super simple for our audience to understand, and also to understand the implications of whatever gets announced here come 2 p.m. today. So I'm joined by a tax expert, but I'm also joined by the spokesperson for the DA. So we'll pivot between those two themes in just a moment. I want to kick off on the tax issue with Zora de Villiers, who is from KPMG. So I want to make things super simple, as I said, for our audience. So when we talk about things like fiscal consolidation, which is the aspiration in budgets like this, what are we talking about? What do we mean?
Good morning. This afternoon, taxpayers will be looking for the tax relief. In particular, they'll be looking for good news in their pockets. We don't expect the minister to announce any tax rate increases this afternoon.
Are we 100% sure?
Let me tell you why. If we have learned anything from last year, there is no way that there's any appetite for tax rate increases, and specifically VAT, because it's a consumption tax and it actually impacts everybody. From a corporate income tax perspective, we must remain competitive for foreign investment, and it's unlikely that the tax rate will go beyond 27%. Government has also in the past indicated that they've got no intention to increase personal income tax rates. So what we've seen is a better than expected revenue collections. Information that has been provided by the National Treasury indicated that the revenue estimates for both corporate income tax and value-added tax are actually higher than expected, and it will be adjusted upwards, while personal income tax will be slightly lower than what was estimated last year. Now, with this background, taxpayers may ask, so what relief will we be getting?
That's a question I'm certainly asking.
Yeah. So for the past 2 years, we have seen no amendments to the tax brackets for inflation. That does bring tax revenue into the pockets for the state, but it does impact the pockets of the consumers. So where will the tax revenue actually come from? I think key to this is SARS with its project that it's currently busy with, where they're aiming to actually have an administration platform driven by AI and real-time information. What they want to see is taxpayers not providing information or reporting to SARS, but really just confirming what they already have on record. So one aspect that SARS is zooming in is actually individuals who actually earn revenue outside of the payroll system. So we're looking at freelancers, we're looking at influencers, we're looking at landlords that are actually renting property out to tenants and owner businesses.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to freelancers, you looked at me very intentionally, and we know, yes, I'm a freelancer as well. I think there also needs to be a little more nuance in the way that tax regime is established, because there's a lot of pressure with uncertain incomes, not necessarily in my case, but for a lot of freelancers out there for whom this would have major implications. I want to touch on two quick things before I go to Mark Burke, and the one is on a wealth tax. Now, talk to us about how economies who are similar to South Africans and South Africa's economy have dealt with this issue and what it could mean for us.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion around wealth taxes. Personally, I don't think it will come in for South Africa. Our marginal tax rate is high at 45% if you compare that to the Africa average or the world average, which is around about 30-31%. So if you tax people more, they can just pack up and go, and we don't want that to happen. For now, we don't see wealth taxes coming in, and as I said, Treasury has indicated previously that they have no intention of raising personal income taxes.
When we look at South Africa as a whole, especially from your purview with the specific interest that you have, let's talk about credit ratings, our perception globally, and what the next 6 months are looking like for us, dependent on how this budget stacks up.
Yeah, I think we're on a good betting currently with the more than expected revenues that we've collected. We must just now stabilize and attract foreign investment in order to ensure that there are more jobs and our economy are able to actually move forward so that we can get more taxes into the tax system.
Zora, thank you so much. That was lovely. And I think also, again, very insightful in terms of our expectations and the things that are needed specifically from a tax perspective. Let's pivot slightly and bring in the politics of it all, because let us not forget, a year ago we were here, brand spanking new GNU. We all wanted to see how it was going to work out and whether they could reach a consensus. We saw what we saw. 2 times, third time was the charm for our budget. We don't think we're going to have any of that drama this year, do we, Mark? Anything that you know, anything you want to tell us?
If I did know, I couldn't tell you, but I hope that this year we would be able to make the budget a bit more boring, and I'm hopeful that we won't have the level of conflict that we saw last year.
And that conflict was a lack of building consensus, a lack of engagement, a lack of unity, which was paradoxical given that we had just announced the GNU. So what has changed in the run-up to this budget in terms of those important discussions that will give us this boring budget that you say we are likely to receive this year?
Well, you're not calling it what we all know it was, which is the ANC's insistence on their dominance. And so, in fact, the repeat attempts at the budget was us needing to remind the ANC that this cannot be an ANC budget. And so when you ask me what will happen this year, the answer is quite simply, we need to have a coalition budget, not an ANC budget. And I'm hopeful that that consensus is attainable if the ANC is willing to listen to its partners when it only has 39% of the seats in Parliament.
I mean, you're speaking about it almost as if it's a separate conversation. Is it attainable? Like, did you guys reach consensus? The budget that we're seeing today, is it going to be a GNU budget?
I think.
Or was the DA voice heard at the table?
Look, I think we know what an ANC budget looks like. It includes propositions like a 2% VAT increase, higher income tax, higher corporate tax, and maybe even things as well as a wealth tax. What I hope we'll see today is not that. What we'll see is no increases in the taxes that I've now described, and in fact adjustments to things like bracket creep, which has been kept in place for 2 years now. Just for the average South African, bracket creep is a form of indirect tax where if you get a slight increase at work, all that happens is that's consumed because your tax bracket is kept at the same rate that it has been kept, and if it was the same this year, it'd be 3 years in a row, which is entirely unworkable.
Or you go into a higher tax budget, a tax bracket, which means you'll be paying more taxes, and so completely still unsustainable.
At a point where South Africans are already deeply overtaxed, we've got Scandinavian-level income taxes that kicks in a lot sooner than the Swedes or the Norwegians have to pay their tax. So, in fact, South Africans cannot be asked to pay more tax at this point. What we should be focusing on is the spending side. We need to make sure we get value for money. We need to make sure there's efficiency in every area where we're incurring spending. And when we implement that efficiency, it doesn't mean that we cut back on things like social spending. It doesn't mean we cut back on doctors or nurses or policemen. It means we get value for money and we eliminate the fat cat Matlala type contracts that exist within our system.
Again, a lot of those allegations now being tested at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. The country is hoping that it leads to arrests and real accountability and money going back into our fiscus, which we need. Talk to us about today. You've already said that there needs to be a lot more consensus. Everyone's voices needs to be included around the table. Anything you can tell us about what your own party aspirations are for what you want to see?
Yeah, I think a lot of it becomes quite bureaucratic at a certain point, and that's really important. So after we now discussed, we need to focus on the bracket creep problem. We need to keep taxes where they are. We need to get spending efficiency. At the same time, we need to look at other thresholds that haven't changed in sometimes decades. So in the case of a VAT registration threshold, that's been the same since 2008 at 1 million rand. If you had adjusted that for inflation, we would now be at close to 2.5 million rand. So those brackets need to go up because the net effect of that is that people who need to register don't need to register at such a low threshold, which makes it a bit easier to start and maintain a small and emerging business. These things are the lifeblood of our economy, and so when we can focus on that bureaucracy, if we are able to focus on these brackets, both on the personal income tax side, on the VAT registration side, on the capital gain side, then over time what you start seeing is an economy that's serious about empowering small businesses.
And we talk about capital gains, you're talking about some of the things that Zora was talking about, like if you make money, secondary or in a third fashion that's not being taxed, that you haven't declared. That's where people really need to focus. I've just used the word focus. You've used the word focus several times in your conversation with me now. How focused is the DA in this moment as a party? You've got some real internal party squabbles. I mean, the John Steenhuisen matter has played itself out for the public to see. You've got your federal Congress coming up in April. You're focused on your own leadership issues. Talk to us about managing that and managing being a credible partner in the GNU.
Well, the DA is a massive party at this point, spanning across 30 local coalitions, one province in coalition, one province run outright, and then being in a national coalition. So it's not down to one individual. But I would say this. It seems to me that the DA is confronted with a dilemma at a rate of about 1 a year, and the ANC is confronted with a crisis at about 1 an hour. So the fact is we are focused. We are making sure that our Deputy Minister, Ashwar Sharupan, is getting our party position across within the Ministry of Finance, and that we hold the ministry and the whole executive to account in this parliament. That hasn't stopped and that won't stop.
So listen, do the poll with me, and maybe you can do it for our viewers. You can just read that out. I'll put the microphone to you.
First time I'm seeing this, but what you've presented to me is what should be the Finance Minister's top priority in the 2026 budget. And the poll apparently says job creation, service delivery, social grants, and cutting spending. I would exchange cutting spending with efficient spending. I don't think we should cut back on critical spending, but we should make excessive spending a lot more efficient. And apart from that, I completely agree with the poll's findings. I'm
glad we've got some agreement here on the street, but from our viewers' perspective, job creation trumps all at 74%. Please keep those votes going. Comments as well. We want to hear your voice in today's budget. So continue to engage at Newzroom 405, hashtag AM Report 405. Live from outside the Dome, where we continue our build-up coverage until the 2 p.m. hour. I'm Iman Rapetti. Let's take a short break.